for those of you who don't know me, my name's Jax Wexler. I actually founded Social Design Sydney in 2013, which is quite some time ago now. There is a website and you can have a look at lots of videos. So many practitioners have shared over this time about all sorts of things related to social design and system change. I'm very interested in that sort of intersection between learning, sharing, and doing. And I'm also lately become really interested in the intersection between outer change and inner change because I actually see them as really linked. And I started a new initiative with my colleague Vivian Sung called the School of Being. I still do some design work at Sticky Design Studio, and that's me. Please say hello if you like. There's my LinkedIn. So Social Design Sydney, the aims of Social Design Sydney are to build a social design community of practice, support social and system change doing, link designers with the social and systems change sector, and share tales of social and systems change and design doing. So it's really about always grounded in practice and building design and social change systems capability. So I also run training through Social Design Sydney. I do a lot of, I run courses in trauma-informed design research. I've got another one happening in July and I run them every kind of 2 months. So if you're interested in how to do less harm through your design research and to become more trauma-informed, please have a look at the training and come along or reach out for a chat around that. But I also wanted to take this opportunity to introduce the School of Being. So as I mentioned, I founded this new initiative with Vivian Sung, and our aim is to restore well-being within ourselves, our relations, our places, and our living world. And we're really focused on being, as in inner development, sensing, systemic sense making, and acting. How might we manifest potential? We both have strategic design backgrounds, and both of us see that really important need to be doing the inner work in order to create this sort of co-create the flourishing worlds that we all want. And I forgot to do the one word check-in, so we'll do that in a moment. And I'm sort of sensing into how am I arriving? I'm arriving feeling really fragile after watching a video this morning. Actually, Kimberly posted it, a video from the Civic video. And at the beginning, there's all these people talking about all the bad things that are happening. And I've been also listening to some Meg Wheatley, who talks about how we're heading for collapse. So with this in my field, I'm arriving a little bit vulnerable and a little bit heavy-hearted, which is also part of, the School of Being, as in we really, Viv and I are like, we can't just tinker on at the edges. How might we able to support the change required? And we really feel that the inner development is a really important and missing piece for supporting all of us to meet each moment, but also what might be coming or what is coming. Yeah, to help us build resilience, help us more generatively meet the future. Anyway, so that's the School of Being. We draw on regenerative, nature-based, creative and somatic practices. As I mentioned, we're interested in that intersection of inner, outer, as well as individual and collective action. We're also, we've got a course happening in July. So this will be the second time we've run this course. It's an online course where we meet every 2 weeks, a small group. Each fortnight, we offer a different practice. We have some homework and then we come back together and share. So it's an experiential journey. It runs, there's 5 sessions over a 10-week period. And if you're interested, have a look. And I also have a discount code. So reach out to me if you'd like. It's not a very big discount, but we're just extending the early bird price. And that is it. So now I'm going to hand over to the lovely Kiri, who's going to share some of her practices with us. Bear with me while I stop sharing my screen. And excuse me, I'm just finding Kiri's bio. All right. So Kiri hails from Amble Studio. And who are Amble Studio? Well, they're passionate about making beautiful games that positively impact how people feel, think, and act. They love the process of bringing games to life through a structured and user-centered approach to achieving outcomes as part of the storytelling journey. Their troupe combines decades of experience in professional and creative contexts, brought together by their excitement about games. And Kiri is a queer cis artist, storyteller, game designer, and diversity consultant. She has a lifelong passion for understanding human relationships with self, other, and earth, explored through professional life and artistic practice. And if you would like, before I hand over to Kiri, in that little handover, if you'd like to put a one-worder in how are you arriving as a little check-in that I neglected to do earlier, that would be most welcome. So over to you, Kiri, in a moment. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jax. And I'll just give folks a minute to to arrive and give us just the one word. Welcome, Maya. We just invited folks to put a one-word check-in how you're arriving in the session today. So it feels like you got here just the right moment for that. Yeah, we've got calm, curious, whirly, and scrambled. Oh, good words. Chill in both senses. Yes. I am in Naarm, Melbourne, so I'm also quite chill. Although my heater is doing really good work this morning. All right. So yeah, I'm Kiri. I want to also pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the land. And I want to tie what Jax was talking about with the topic today. I mean, I said it's about what was it? Making change and like selling community adaptation. So the community adaptation that I'm talking about is adaptation to climate change, knowing that climate change is coming, that's really huge and slightly terrifying, majorly terrifying if you really look at it, and that a lot of people in the community aren't equipped to respond to that. And the kind of the hugeness and the complexity of the problem kind of makes people paralyzed or unable to even kind of go there. So how this is going to go today, I'm going to share a bit. I've just got like half a dozen slides to talk through with you. And then I really want us to have a conversation about this. And I also want to surface that there's kind of an ick in me about this topic of like selling community adaptation. It's like I spoke to Jax and we were like, yeah, this is the interesting story to tell of like how you run a business that's also making change. And then it's like, as soon as I saw that title go out into the world, I was kind of like, ew, that seems like a nasty thing, you know, like I'm not really a fan of capitalism. I'm not really a fan of like the exploitation and extraction that comes with capitalism. And yet I am a person in the world who is passionate about making change and about needing to make a livelihood to take care of myself and my family. So I just wanted to like surface that right up front to be like, all of that is in this space. So I'll talk a little bit about the adaptation game. And then we'll have a bit more of a yarn about that broader milieu of making change and making a living. All right. Welcome, energized Maya. Okay. Here is, all right, selling community adaptation. And yeah, so the adaptation game started with Ben Pederick. So it was like before Amble Studio got involved, Ben was doing his PhD at Deakin University on transmedia. And he had this notion of like, I'm really worried about climate change. How can I mobilize people to think about it? People aren't talking about it enough. And he had a friend who was working at Marybeck City Council, who was also really worried about mobilizing people to think more about climate change. And Ben had this notion like, maybe it could be some kind of game. Maybe a game is what could mobilize people to talk more about climate change and adapting and getting their head around the reality of the future that we're moving towards. And that's when Amble Studio came in. So, you know, Ben was put in touch with us. There were various other partners involved as well at the beginning, but like it's kind of condensed down to like Ben and Amble Studio, who have really developed the adaptation game over the last couple of years. Initially with Marybeck City Council. So we did a co-design process with Marybeck City Council with a bunch of different people in their community, and we created the adaptation game. We had various prototype versions, but this is pretty much like the finished product that it looks like. And what the adaptation game is a tabletop game that simulates climate change where you live. So basically, people sit at a table. There's a facilitator that kind of talks them through the story of like traveling into the future. And the heart of it is that there's a map of your local government area. And as you play through the game, there's various shocks like, oh, here's a massive storm. Or here is a heat wave, here is a bushfire, here is a flood. And you get to see on the map how your local government area, so potentially how your own home will be impacted by those big weather events. So yeah, storyful scenarios, merging local experience with climate science. So those maps that we create, they're a little bit about helping the fiction, but they are really based on data from that local government area. And what people are also doing as they play the game is coming up with adaptations, coming up with things that they are doing in their home or in their street, in their local community to prepare themselves or get ready, mitigate the impacts of climate change that are coming. There's kind of a stealth thing of like encouraging community through the game. Like collaborative storytelling is a great way to get people to express collaborative capabilities without kind of like teaching them how to collaborate. And that's one of the things that Amble Studio is really built on, this notion that storytelling games, things like Dungeons and Dragons or other kinds of role-playing games, really inspire people to collaborate by the way that they're designed. And so the adaptation game is kind of built on that, that understanding and that experience and that legacy. Yeah, so we started with Marybeck. We're now working with 9 different local government areas in metro and regional and rural Victoria. We're also in conversation. We're about to start working with a local government in New Zealand. And there are a couple of local governments interstate that we're talking to that are looking to also have tag. And there's all sorts of like bigger conversations. Like, yeah, one of my colleagues, Haley, has a whole lot of family in the US. So she's been over there talking to folks. And there's also been a conversation with ICLAI, which is like a global climate change body. So thinking about how we might apply this kind of thinking to preparedness, you know, in the Pacific or other developing countries. All right. So that's the kind of the rundown of tag. In terms of how we deliver it and how we deliver it as a business, phase 1 of tag is the localization and co-design and training. So what we're trying to do is like create this product that is the tag kind of board game, but we're also trying to build the capability of local government in partnership with community to continue delivering the game without us, basically. So we're thinking about that right at the start. And in the localization process, we're asking our local government partners, like, who in your community are going to be the people that will take this forward, that will really get into using this resource and keep running it? And how do we involve them right from the start so that they continue, you know, being resourced and that they're part of creating the local version of tag. And that phase 1 process costs about $9,000 and takes about 3 months, I would say. Generally, like, it can be shorter or longer, like it depends how long it takes to get people around the table, basically, but it's about 3 months. At the end of that, they get 1 kit, And they have the option to purchase further kits from us for $300 each. And they also will have like a small pool of folks that are ready to deliver tag to host tables. And it really depends, like different local governments are pointing it in different directions. For some local governments, it's much more about adaptation and kind of connecting people. Like Marybeck's got a page called Zero Carbon Marybeck, that they're pointing folks who play tag towards Zero Carbon Marybeck to connect with other resources, groups, organizations, also potential funding streams. In other places like in Hepburnshire, it's much more focused towards emergency preparedness. And that's really the thing that they want to galvanize people around. So the action changes depending on where it's used. And then phase 2 rollout. So some local governments, again, like, Maribyrnong, they've done phase 1. They feel super confident. They're happy to just run with it. And they're just, taking tag out into the community. They bought a bunch of kits from us, but they feel really clear that they're just going to keep running it and they're happy. Other local governments, I think Yarra Rangers wanted us to come and run extra facilitator training to get that pool of facilitators bigger and stronger. So there's a bit of further work beyond that initial kind of investment. Further work sometimes supporting different local governments with community events, providing extra facilitators or training extra facilitators. I think those are the main things. One of the things that we've been really, I was going to talk about this in a moment, but one of the things we've been really aware of is this notion, like we call it, like we don't want to sell a monorail. Like we really want this product to be something that local government can use and that will kind of exist in the community and keep providing benefit. And so, we're really mindful of having a genuine impact, making sure that tag really does have an impact in the community and making sure that we really build that capability within local government and within the community to kind of take this resource and keep using it. And one of the heartening things that we've seen is that there's lots of different ways to use it. So playing a game of tag can take 3 hours. Like it can be quite a big chunk of time, an investment of time for folks to come along and play it. But we've also seen some of our partners like Neighbours United for Climate Action in Marybeck went to a local kind of festival and they had a table and they just had the game board there and the maps and were just showing people, like getting people to point like, where do you live? And then showing them the different maps and like how they might be impacted by different big weather events. We've also used tag as like an actual play thing. So having one group of people who are playing tag and then having an audience of people kind of watching that and participating in the game in different ways. So there is a bit of flexibility in how you can use it and how it can be delivered, which also adds to the impact and helps, build that community conversation. So this is the other things. I was also going to say that we run like a peer learning group so that all the councils that we're working with can come together every couple of months and talk about how they're using tag and what their next steps are. And that's really fabulous because local government is so great at collaborating with each other and so generous at sharing resources and things. It's beautiful. So tag supports players and those they know to connect into other action pathways that council might have. It's not an initiative that's about trying to like win over the haters. It's not about it's not really targeted at like climate deniers. It's much more about connecting with folks that might be curious about climate change or who have that fear and just feel kind of paralyzed by it. And the heart of it is, taking that big amorphous ball of fear and making it really specific and really local. It's like, this is what it's going to look like for you where you live. And that makes it much more tangible. It makes the actions, the possibility for action much more apparent. So people walk away from playing tag feeling less anxious and a lot more hopeful and a lot more clear about what they can personally do. Even though often when I play tag with people, there is a kind of heaviness, like there's big feelings that come up when you see, you know, how a flood might impact you or your home, for example. But even though there's those big feelings, people still walk away feeling more hopeful because they're kind of like, okay, this big thing is going to happen and it might be really awful, but there are things that I can do to support myself and my community around this. Yeah, okay. So that's what tag is. That's the kind of the product that we created. And I just like did some thinking about like what have been the challenges as someone like I've only worked in government and not-for-profit kind of sectors in the past. So Amble started during lockdown. That was kind of JobKeeper was like our startup funds. And we are a self-managing organization of 5 of us who are in Amble Studio, and then TAG is also a partnership with Ben. So creating and maintaining alignment between the various partners is a really crucial thing. I think it tends to take more time than people expect that it will, but it is super important. It is absolutely, when like maintaining trust between all the people involved is super important. Once the trust goes, then people start getting nitpicky about stuff and productivity goes way down. So putting time into alignment is really crucial. The next point, keeping the product cost in a range that the market can handle without driving yourself into the ground, which is also connected to this notion of getting carried away by passion. But yeah, so we put the cost of tag of that localization phase at 9,000, knowing that most local governments like that there's an authorizing kind of layer that if you go above 10 grand for any project, then you're involving a different layer of the organization. So that's kind of a very practical kind of ceiling that we set for ourselves to make it easier for people to say yes, to put it at that price. But then you also need to make sure that is an amount that is actually covering the time that you're putting in. And this is connected to getting carried away by passion. So, you know, we really want to make a difference. We really want it to work in the councils that we're working with. And so sometimes it's really hard to say no, to be like, actually, this is all we're able to do. Or, you know, we could do that extra thing for you, but it's going to cost an extra amount of money for us to be able to do that. So over promising, and I'm sure any of you who work for yourself as consultants would have had this experience too, that you can't just say yes to everything. And you can't work for free because then you end up not being able to pay your rent and awful things like that. Getting carried away by passion has another dimension that you can sort of, which is that monorail thing that I brought up before, that notion of like, this is a really great idea. Everyone should really love this. We're going to do amazing things, and kind of getting stars in your eyes and getting really like inflated about what you're doing. And we're mindful of like staying grounded, you know, evaluating what we're doing, making sure that we are actually having a sustainable impact with the work that we're doing, and that it is of value to the communities that we're talking to. Given that, like, yes, we need to put a price on things and we need to be paid for our work. It does bring up stuff around access and equity. There are some local governments that can't afford 9,000. And so, yeah, we're also, it's not something that we're dealing with directly right now. There's some folks that I'm working with on funding applications to try and get funding to be able to do this in those communities. And we're also looking at like, how might we partner with the Victorian government, for example, to make this available to more communities. Because there's also this potential that if TAG, the adaptation game, takes off in a lot of places, that word of mouth will increase the conversation about adaptation and community resilience generally, which would be a really fabulous outcome. Because of course people live within local government areas, but communities aren't bounded by local government areas, and climate disasters aren't bounded by local government areas. So yeah, it's always kind of spilling out across those arbitrary borders. The next point around funding for backbone services. So TAG is a product, and it has a price on it that kind of covers our time and the resources that go into producing that product. But then there's all these other things like creating facilitator resources, or having the peer learning circle, or promoting our work, that's not necessarily covered by that sort of product funding. And so that's another question that we're asking ourselves. We're just kind of making it work at the moment, because we think it's important. But I guess it's something that we're looking for, is like, how could we get funding to do more of the kind of the meta, so that we're not constantly kind of locked in this cycle of just trying to like talk to the next local government to get the next localization project happening, to to be in that cycle, to be able to like zoom back and have a look at the bigger picture, and how these things are fitting together. And finally, making sales. So that's been like a really big journey for me, that I'm used to working, I worked for myself for about 5 or 6 years as a consultant, and it was very relational. It was like, I go and have a cuppa with someone, we talk about big ideas, which I love. And then they'd be like, oh, hey, so-and-so is looking for a facilitator for such and such. And it was all that kind of word of mouth stuff. And what I've found with the adaptation game is that we have to be a bit more directed, and a bit more like ringing up council and saying, hey, we've got this thing. Are you interested in having a look at it? And there's so much cringe about that. Like, I'm sure you've all been getting like random cold calls on your mobile phones from, people all over the place trying to sell you stuff, which feels really horrible. And so, yeah, like really, for me, getting my head around what it takes to make sales, and really trying to reframe it as like, it's about trying to get the word out. We're trying to support people with something that will actually help them. And the more that I've learned about local government and climate change kind of conversations, the more I realize, like, yeah, this is something like the adaptation game solves a genuine problem that local government has in, just engaging the community and having deeper, richer, more useful conversations about climate change adaptation. And this, also the creativity that can come out of it, is quite beautiful. So yeah, being clear about purpose, and really also just being prepared to push myself to like do some uncomfortable stuff of like, yeah, ringing people up and talking about a thing. And you can also be really respectful in that. So I think that is kind of the bulk of my kind of presentation. That's just stuff about referees. This is the team, in case you want to see all of our smiling faces. And I will stop my share, and then we can have a chat. So I can see folks are
Just interrupt for a second. I don't know if we want to start recording at this point. I'm open to that. So I just wanted to get at, what are we feeling? Is that something that we would like to do to keep it closed? Or would you like, I just wanted to put that in the field before we began. Anyone's got preferences? Please voice. What do you guys feel? Also, it may create some sort of safety here, but it also might be also good to share the sorts of things that we discuss. So You know,
Yeah.
if anyone is not wanting it, then I'd say we don't do it. But if everyone is okay, let's leave it open. Does that?
Yep. Oh, good, Nikki. Yep. And it sounds like people are fine with it.
Great. Just wanted to check. Thanks. Okay. Maya's preferring not.
Okay.
Another thing we could do is leave it open and then make the call after whether I put it out or not. I think that'd be, yeah, okay. We'll just have that radar in your head and how you're feeling about it. Cool. I can do that. Thanks.
So just having a look at the chat, like, yeah, definitely can send some information out. And I guess that's part of the reason why I was keen to reach out to Jax and to talk to folks in this network, because, yeah, if we are going interstate, we don't want to be flying interstate. There's a lot of the process of localization that we can do online. We use a Miro board to get our partners to put the data together and to get them to review all the components and that kind of thing. But when it comes to actually delivering or facilitating tag sessions, yeah, we would like to be partnering with folks locally who can do that. So if that's something you're interested in, yeah, please do get in touch with me. Susan says, it strikes me that there might be a phase 3 of community practice to get people sharing techniques and to input into product development over time. Yeah, peer learning, definitely. And also, yeah, with the facilitators, like that's something we haven't really cracked yet. We've just started with having like a Miro board where we've got all the facilitator resources kind of in one place and linked from that Miro board. And people can leave comments and stories and ask questions on the Miro board, but they're not doing that yet. But that is something, yeah, we've kind of had a lot of conversations amongst ourselves, like, is it a Discord server where we get tag facilitators together to talk about what they're doing? But yeah, again, it's that thing at the moment of, you know, what is the right kind of social media channel that people are already using that's going to be easy and convenient for them, when again people feel so inundated. Yeah. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. We are in contact with Blue Mountains Council, Maya. But yeah, it's still kind of early days. If you have someone there that you're connected to, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, that's my local area. So yeah, we've probably got some contacts in the community team. Yeah, happy to assist.
Yeah, cool.
Sounds like it'd be really relevant, just given the geography of our area.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've been working with Yarra Ranges, which I think is, I think of it as a bit of a similar, like it's the edge of the urban, and like part of that local government area is quite rural. But they're the sort of the second most disaster prone local government area in Victoria, just because of the built upness of it, but also the bushiness of it. It's it's tricky.
And I think with elections coming up in September, the councillors that would be interested in getting on board.
Yeah, cool. Kimberly, did you want to bring your question in?
Yeah, just first, sounds amazing, and thanks for being upfront with all of your icks and things. It's great to hear. And yeah, I was just wondering about the maps. It seems as though that must take a lot of effort to actually put are you getting data for certain, you know, flood levels are going to do X and that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Rebecca Dahl is our team member who does the maps and the localization. So she's pretty incredible in terms of her skill set. So she's got like a master's in behavioral science, but she's also got a background in graphic design, and so yeah, she takes that data and applies it to the maps. It's not, the maps aren't like super scientifically accurate or even super geographically accurate. One of the aims of the game, like I said, was to build community and to get people to think in terms of community resilience and not just personal resilience. And that's something that emerges as a result of playing the game. So when Beck makes the map, she's thinking about the experience as well.
Right.
So often she'll kind of shrink things or shrink some areas and enlarge other areas so that when people place themselves on the map, they still feel kind of close to each other. There's also really different things that we've done with different maps, like in Hepburnshire, they've got the map's double-sided, and on one side, on each side, it has like the map of the whole shire, but then it's got like zoomed in particular towns. So people can have that sense of us all together, but also still kind of see themselves in their locality. Yeah, it takes time, but Beck does it, and she's really good at it, and there's a bit of an art to it. Yeah.
Amazing that, like, as that sort of, boundary object then to basically facilitate those conversations. It's great, as you said, because it can be a dip in a 3-hour session or a play. So it's incredible.
Yeah. Susan, Climate Ready Australia. Oh, wonderful. Yeah, they sound like good people for us to talk to. Yeah.
Kiri, I'd love to ask, if it's okay. I work in the youth space, and I'm really interested to understand, this feels like it aligns a lot with, like, we know that young people in Australia, or a lot of young people in Australia, have like climate change and climate change anxiety is a really like prominent thing on their agenda. We also know that connection and community is a real focus for this upcoming generation. I'm really interested in hearing about, like, if you've thought about or ways you're sort of approaching, like, bringing young people into that conversation through local councils. It really reminds me of a program, I'm not sure if you've heard of the Young Mayors program, which is local community-based, kind of like replacing the old youth reference groups of old, and more about like really engaging young people in civics and elections and that kind of stuff. And it just feels like there's a lot of crossover there. So I'm just interested to hear if that's something that you're thinking of, even like working in schools. Like, is that things that you guys have been thinking about?
It's one of the challenges of TAG is like we've got this thing that or this process and this product that's working around like local government and local government areas. And we often have people being like, oh, but I would really love to play this with students at school, or, oh, but what about businesses? There's businesses who would really love to play this. And we started TAG with a little kind of bit of grant money that we had to kind of develop it initially. And so in a way, it's like to be able to kind of redevelop it for other target audiences, we need some kind of injection of funding to be able to do that developmental work. Or we need to get further down the track with, and kind of have spare cash with our current model. So that's one layer. And then, another layer, lots of folks have talked to us about, like, we'd love to run this with young people, or we've got a youth affairs team. I think the other thing that's important is around agency. Like, that's a really key thing in the game, to do with emotional safety, but also to do with the experience we're trying to generate is really getting people to think about what they can do in their own area so that they feel empowered to kind of take further steps. And I just wonder with young people, I would want to make sure, like, we have had young folks play the game and have an experience of it. But wanting to make sure that they do walk away with that sense of agency and not the kind of despair of like, oh my goodness, the adults have not got this, and now it's down to me. So it would need work.
That's really fair, and I think a really thoughtful approach as well. I definitely want to share this with the Young Mayors team. just because I think there's a lot of like, even in hearing you talk about like you're approaching councils and like the upskilling and also wanting to give the program and the game a life beyond the work you do with the councils. I think there's a lot of alignment with the way that you guys work. So there might be a nice connection there.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for that. Any other questions or comments? Like what's this whole thing bringing alive in you?
Hi, how you going?
Thanks, Mark.
I am a landscape architect and urban designer. So, you know, we're kind of in that space, I guess, of trying to bridge, you know, community and government and private and public and obviously engaging people with the natural world in different ways. But I'm kind of interested in the scenarios that you're creating, and maybe you could elaborate a little bit on kind of, are there a particular number of scenarios? Is it like you're creating them or the community's creating them, or how's it all happening? And then maybe just even an example of then maybe how that evolves within a particular workshop or whatever.
Yeah.
Just interested to see what kind of outcomes might come out of it.
Yeah.
That you've seen that have been really interesting. Yeah.
So at the start of the game, like we kind of give people this narrative, this story of like, you know, we're going to jump into our time machine and travel into the future. And so each round of the game is kind of 2 years in time. And in each round there's a shock at one part of the game. So they start off by getting the news, like that sort of global news about what's happening in the world. They have a space to react to that. Then they come up with their adaptations, and they also vote for programs. So there's a space in the game for councils to kind of highlight the stuff that they're doing and for people to kind of get that sense of what local government is doing. And then there's a shock. And so throughout the game, there'll be 3 shocks. There's 3 different rounds. And, you know, those shocks are pretty much defined by our local government partner, sometimes in conversation with other people in the community, depending on the local government and their relationships. But they'll pick 3 shocks that they most want their community to prepare for or be aware of. So in metro places, there's usually heat wave, there's usually a storm. Depending on how much on the edge, there might be a fire, or there might be like storm surge flooding, or flash flooding. So yeah, that's one of the ways where we really tailor those things depending on what that local government wants. But they usually have data about how it will affect their local government, and then Beck uses that to make the maps.
Cool.
Yeah. Answer your question?
Yep. No, that's cool. So it is kind of every time tailored to the place. Yeah, I was kind of interested in that. And then are there examples where then the community is sort of partnered with councils on particular projects to kind of, is that emerging, or more communities kind of trying to do it on their own, or what's kind of the trajectory?
I think so. Marybeck is the one that's kind of furthest along, because we've been working with them for 2 years basically. It's I wouldn't say that TAG has like generated any like new partnerships, but what it more does is kind of connect people with existing opportunities or existing kind of resources and things. And even then it's sort of it's like, you know, they might play tag and then they might see something, and, you know, it's just one, another plank in the, you know, the platform of motivation that they'd need to like make change. Yeah.
Okay.
So Maya, I think you unmuted yourself at the same time. So
Oh yeah, I was just going to ask, do you have advice for for another organisation that is looking to, I guess, working on a different social issue, you know, I guess coming along today, I was thinking about, yeah, translating what we do into products and that sort of thing. Just wondered if you had advice from the process you've gone through.
Yeah. Yeah, so getting some kind of like startup funding for that development phase, I think is pretty crucial. And we co-designed the game initially, you know, with local government and community. So and yeah, we're just really big on co-designing our games generally to make sure that as we're developing it, that it's you know, incorporating those perspectives and lived experiences that we can't necessarily know if we just sit in our office and work it out for ourselves. And I would say that's true. So as Amble Studio, I guess Tag's kind of the most successful game that we've created, but other things that they've worked on that have done well, it's been where yeah, there is that really strong relationship and we can kind of hand over the game to the other organization to use ongoingly. Yeah, but it's tough. I would say it's tough. It's there's a lot of work that you kind of have to put in unpaid before you see any kind of reward or benefit.
And is there anything around, so is it purely kind of environmental disasters, or is there anything around, you know, climate change obviously has economic impacts also, around sort of, you know, collapsing economies, and then, you know, looking at skills and skills sharing and different ways of kind of creating and trading and being, and, you know, local microeconomies or whatever? Is there stuff around that?
So there's stuff in like the news headlines that come in each round that connects with that, like, you know, drought leading to famine, or in different parts of the world, or you know, refugees coming in from islands that are now unlivable. But in terms of kind of alternative economic systems, not necessarily. It depends who's playing and what adaptations they bring in. So often people will kind of start tool sharing or skill sharing groups and that kind of stuff as part of the adaptations that they bring in. Yeah. But it's not necessarily, I guess that's one of the design principles as well. Like, we've really tried not to tell people what adaptation looks like for them. We've got a kind of a handout that has loads of questions and getting them to think about all different parts of their life, like their health and their home and their their financial income and that kind of thing, and ask them lots of questions about what kind of adaptations they might come up with, rather than like giving them a list and being like, pick an adaptation from this list.
Okay, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so there's lots of triggers for thinking and questions. Yeah, cool.
I'm just wondering, like, so you've got this kind of level of abstraction playing through a game. Any kind of reflections or thoughts about getting stuff actually happening in the world and crossing that bridge from concept game to, you know, embodied action and collaboration and so forth? Any reflections for what you've noticed so far?
I mean, that's the sort of thing, that's actually the topic that we've got for our next peer learning circle, is like talking to all the different local governments about, talking to our different collaborators about that movement from play to action and like different ways. Because like I said, like different partners are handling that differently. They want different outcomes. And so, yeah, it's different every time. I'm also meeting with someone from government in a couple of weeks. So they've done lots of work with behavioural insights around bushfire emergency preparedness in particular. So yeah, I mean, we're still working on that, Jax. What insights do I have about that? I mean, and we're a bit focused on kind of like getting it into community and getting people playing and talking. Some things that we're experimenting with is getting people to kind of say or like write a statement of like, you know, now that I've played the game, this is the first step that I'm going to take. And it might just be as simple as like, I'm just going to talk to my family about this, or I'm going to talk to my neighbors. I think those small but really solid steps are more important in a way than like people coming out with like lots of big ideas. Lots of people say like, I want to start a community garden as one of their adaptations, but then the realities of doing that is quite complex. Like, you know, do you have land that you can use for that? So yeah, small concrete steps and getting people to say a thing in front of other people, I think is quite powerful. Yeah. So you're coming up as LVK. Would you tell me what your name is?
Oh, that's the name that I use. It's
Okay.
my initials, but everybody
Okay.
calls me that because I used to be a high school teacher.
Great.
But Lauren, if that makes you feel weird.
No, that's fine. If that's what you want to go with, I'm super happy with that. Yeah, so you're saying D&D nerd. Yeah, like that's where we started from, is like we all played D&D together and then we
It
started.
really reminds me, have you ever played End of the World? Is another RPG.
Don't
And
know.
it's more like monster based, but it's based on the real world and you play as yourself and a monster bursts out of the ground somewhere in your city and you have to do something about it, or vampires or robots or something. It's very silly, but very good. It reminds me a lot of that, but you know, obviously a lot more thoughtful and a lot more real, unfortunately.
Yeah. And Kimberly, you're asking about a research paper. So Ben's doing his PhD on this, basically.
Excellent.
So yeah, when he finds the time to like sit down and capture everything,
Yeah.
there should be some articles coming out about it at some point.
Right. Is the bushfire stuff that you're working on Yoko Okama's work? Does that come from
I
her
don't
work?
know. I've got a meeting with this person in a couple of weeks, and then I'll know more then. But Yoko,
I can send you the papers if you,
cool.
because she did some really, really interesting work in Victoria after the Black Day of the week. What was it? Wednesday, Friday fires.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was about the same sort of base as you, as the first thing is building those connections in community, so that when a disaster happens, people have those connections to rely upon.
Yeah. Great. So I just put my email address in there if anyone wants to get in touch with me. And to find out more about the adaptation game is tagclimatetrail.org.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kiri. It's been so interesting, and thank you all for coming in person and having space for a dialogue. It's been really great. Well, thank you. Thanks so much, and good to see everybody. And
Thank you.
care as well.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.